Hello, Abu Dhabi. Yeah, it's the morning over there, but stateside, it's fight night. It's the return of Conor McGregor going up against Dustin Poirier. It's Poirier McGregor 2, and it all goes down tonight.
This is a story about an idea, fate whispered. An idea void of physical impressions, yet powerful enough to rule the world at any moment. We gaze at the aura that cast over them, forged by the time and the unflinching will of human perseverance. We grow determined as we bear witness to destined paths bound by fate.
Fighting has opened the path to redemption for me.
Everybody out there, there's people telling you can't do it, or you're the underdog, or you're not told you're not good enough. I've been told that my whole life, and I'm the world champ.
McGregor looking to make history. That is all over. History.
I've never seen anything like that.
Ideas are all powerful. Fate continues. They shape who you are and forecast what you can become. It's an aura created by an insatiable desire to take what is yours. It embeds a legion of believers who act as a full-scale symphony by your side, suspended by your every word.
One of us go to war. We all go to war. Let's go.
Like a storm forming on the horizon, you will be heard. You will be seen. Each time you enter that storm, you emerge reborn.
Poirier with the finish.
That was it. Dustin Poirier. God, I earned this in blood. I can pay it in full. This is mine.
And any one of these melty fills can get it.
What good is the glory if the struggle isn't there? For every victory that makes sense of the failures, put destiny on the other side, and you shall meet them head on.
I've never disliked somebody that much that I'm ever fought.
Welcome back to a brand new edition of Ariel the Bad Guy right here on all the platforms. I'm Ariel, and that's the very dapper bad guy, Chael P. Sonnen. And Chael, I know when you break out the suit, you break out the pocket square, I know it's a big night. I don't know if you know this, but it's a really big night, Chael P. Sonnen. It's the return of Conor McGregor against the man who he beat in 2014, but the man who has improved infinitely since that time back in 2014, the one and only Dustin the Diamond Poirier, and so much more to talk about on this preview show as we take you up to UFC 257. How are you, sir? Good evening.
I'm doing great. I want to take some issue with a few things you said, but I have a feeling we're going to do that later in the show, so get me started.
Interesting. You know what? As I was saying something in particular, I was wondering if you were going to take issue with it, so that's a nice little tease. But first, let's set the table. We've got a great card coming up, 11 fights on the card. The big one, of course, is the return of Conor McGregor against Dustin Poirier. It's not for the belt. It's just a big-time fight. It's not a vacant title fight. It's not an interim title fight. I got to ask you, Chael, just to set the table, after everything that's gone on between KHABIB and the UFC and his insistence on not coming back anytime soon, are you surprised that ultimately they didn't make this fight for the belt?
In many ways, I am. And a bigger surprise is that they have not clearly identified that the winner of the main event will take on the winner of the co-main event. So, yeah, we're left a little bit hanging. We're left to guess a little bit, but that would have been my prediction had you asked me a month ago.
Yeah, I'm not ultimately surprised. I don't think this fight needs a title, but I'd be shocked if Conor wins his next fight's not for the belt. Would you agree with that?
I would fully agree with that. I mean, I think we got to get on with it. Look, Conor said something very interesting the other day. It was at the press conference, and he said, hey, strip KHABIB. Strip him for failing to face the top opponents. Now, that's interesting from a marketing standpoint. Which would you rather have? Would you rather have a guy vacate and give you your belt back, or would you rather take it off the son of a gun? Those are the two options. I just thought, I don't have a point, or I don't have an opinion here. I just thought it was an interesting point from McGregor.
All right. So let's talk about Conor McGregor a little bit. First fight since January of last year, the 42nd win over Donald Cerrone. Of course, very frustrated that he didn't get his number called throughout the rest of the year. Of course, the pandemic slowed things down, but once the UFC got back up and running, he wanted to fight. Unfortunately, couldn't come to terms with the UFC, was butting heads with Dana White. Finally, they figured it out, and they landed on this rematch against Dustin Poirier. Now, one of the big talking points all week long has been his demeanor. He just seems so happy. There's no bad blood. There's no trash talk. It's all buddy-buddy. We saw it at the press conference. We saw it at the weigh-ins. What do you make of this? There are some who think, Conor has to be mad. He's got to be all fired up. There are some who say, hey, this is good. He's in a good spot. He doesn't need that anymore. Where do you fall?
Imagine being in Conor's shoes. Okay, here's the elephant in the room nobody wants to talk about. The second easiest fight of Conor's entire career is against Dustin Poirier. Second easiest being defined second shortest, second fewest strikes thrown, second fewest beads of sweat dripping off the Irishman's forehead. Okay, it was the second easiest fight he's ever had. Conor can't call out Dustin, and Conor didn't call out Dustin. Conor got called out. Dana put the fight together. But think of this in Conor's perspective. If he just cleaned somebody up to the point that it was the second easiest match he ever had, and now he comes out and picks on that guy, he's going to look like a bully. If Conor got one dealt from the bottom of the deck, a return to mega money, to pay-per-view, to everybody's attention against the second easiest fight he's ever had, of course, man, he's got to be a gentleman.
Yeah. So, okay. So he's nice to him. There's no bad blood. They're talking about each other's businesses and all that stuff. Ultimately, though, you bring up a great point. In the past, Conor has said, I'm not interested in the Poirier fight. I'm not interested in the Aldo fight because how am I going to top what I did to those guys? So do you feel like there is a level of pressure on Conor's shoulders to finish him in 60 seconds as he predicted? Like if this starts to go into the third and fourth, does he start doubting himself that like, hey, I beat this guy in a minute 46, 6.5 years ago. Why can't I put him away?
And Ariel, I'll answer your question, but from the other side of the coin, because I have thought about this. If you were to put MMA into, say, track and field terms, where it's not about can I beat the guy next to me, it's about what we call PR, personal record. Poirier has very little pressure to get a personal record, to show that he has improved, to show that he has closed the gap. All he has to do is get to the 3-minute mark. If he can get into the second round, he has a personal record beyond compare. If he can get into the 4th and 5th round, he has a personal record and has shown improvement, and he has closed the gap beyond words. So when you look at it from that perspective, the pressure would lie on McGregor.
So we'll talk about Poirier and whether or not he has closed that gap, at least in terms of the body of work since 2014. But I just want to ask you a few more things about Conor McGregor. Another big storyline that we got the answer to for the most part leading up to this fight was how would he look at 155? First time cutting weight to lightweight since October of 2018, the KHABIB fight. And he was the first on the scale on Friday morning, weighed in at championship weight, as he put it, 155.0. Appears to be in great shape. What did you make of the kind of shape that he was in?
Yes, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then Conor told us that he looks like $1 million. And look, I think that Conor's always looked great. I do think that it's a little bit of a false narrative to ever question Conor's conditioning. I dismiss the Nate Diaz fight where Conor, in his words, was inefficient with his energy. Look, Conor didn't just go up one weight class. He went up 2 weight classes. Of course you're going to get fatigued. I dismiss that he was tired and quit against Floyd Mayweather. I acknowledge it happened, but it was a sport that he's never done, and it was a half an hour later. Canelo was tired in 9 minutes against the same opponent, Floyd Mayweather. I only share with you, I do not think if you're going to hang your hat on the argument that I can get Conor tired, therefore make him quit, because I've seen it happen before. Guys, I think you're making a sucker's bet.
Let's talk the technical aspect of this
Do
fight.
you disagree with that, though? I mean, Ariel, do you hear what I'm saying? Sure, he got tired against Diaz, but he was up 2 weight classes. That's a remarkable challenge. Sure, he got tired against Floyd, but he went 10 rounds with him. I mean, I think that that's a fair point by me.
No, it's 100% a fair point. I don't think people like to talk about how his cardio is his Achilles heel. Like you're talking about 1 or 2 fights where he's quote unquote gassed out. I never thought that 170 was a good weight class for him. I always felt like he was packing on too much weight. Remember when he was fighting at 170, he was eating a massive breakfast just to get to like 168 Not even 170, right? 155 for me was always the best weight class for him. And it's kind of a shame, even though he's still very young in his career, that we've only seen him against Eddie Alvarez and KHABIB at 155. I'm very happy to hear that he wants to make a run at 155 because I feel like this is his best weight class.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And I think that it is important that he settles in. I think it was a very cool experiment. I'm enjoying the experiment that we're seeing even right now with Chimaev of the changing of weight classes. But look, if you want to be the champion of the world, you do have to focus. You have to point your cannons all in one direction. It's been very unclear until this week where Conor's come out, told you very clearly on your show, I'm staying at 55.
Yeah. So I want to talk about some of the technical aspects of this fight. And this is almost like a two-parter for me. Both fighters, Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor, traditionally fight southpaw, right? Left-handed fighters. Why is that unique? What are the challenges there as opposed to the more traditional orthodox versus orthodox or orthodox versus southpaw? Very rare that you get southpaw versus southpaw.
It's highly over-publicized. Who cares what leg a guy leads? I mean, ultimately, when you're talking southpaw versus orthodox, he's going to circle this way, and I got to step outside, and your hook's going to be there versus your right hand. Ariel, you're talking about what leg does a guy have in front of the other? Who gives a damn? I fought 50 men. I have the foggiest idea who is a southpaw and who. I don't know who put what leg in front of the other. But I do hear a lot of talk on this. I hear a lot of talk on this from trainers. The truth to your question, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a darn bit of difference. If you're out there moving around, I can only touch you with this weapon. I can only touch you with this weapon, okay? And I can point that same thing to my feet. The rules don't change. Nothing is different because they're southpaws. And anybody that tries to give you a long and digress into why is a jerk.
Okay, so I love this. I love what you just said. You know why? Let me break the fourth wall for you here for just a quick second. I haven't really talked about this. I spoke to John Kavanagh, Conor's head coach, just a couple days ago on my show. And at one point in the interview, Kavanagh says to me, yeah, we've been practicing orthodox for this fight. And he's like, oh, could you cut that out? Could you cut that out? This is while we're taping the interview. And I was like, yeah, sure. Interview ends, because that's notable for the people who care about this thing, because Conor's the southpaw. Oh, he's training orthodox. Interesting. After the interview's over, I was like, yeah, don't worry. I understand you slipped up. You don't want to reveal the game plan. I respect that. You're cool. All right, we'll cut that out. He's like, nah, you could keep that in. Keep them guessing. All right. So the whole exchange remained. Since then, Chael, I've been getting so much hate mail over this that I've exposed Conor's game plan, that I wronged John Kavanagh when in fact he's playing mind games with everyone. So I want to let everyone know that no, I did not expose anything. No, I didn't wrong John Kavanagh. And honestly, I don't know if he's working me. I don't know if he's working the audience. I don't know what's going on, but I just want to let everyone know I'm a man of integrity. Okay, for God's sakes, I would never do that sort of thing. I mean, you could roll your eyes all you want. I'm a man who, ethics. My middle name is ethics. Okay, Chael. So what do you make of this? Is he working me? Is he working the audience? Is he working you? I don't know. Could you answer? Who knows?
First off, I'd like to clear this up. I did not roll my eyes. You are a man of integrity. I was not laughing about, in a very sincere note. I know that you are, but is he working? That does make me wonder. Yes, there seems to be some kind of a head game here. Listen, let me make this very clear. Conor McGregor is a champion of the world, okay? No great fighter, let alone a champion of the world, would ever change what he's going to do to accommodate his opponent. If your opponent's a southpaw, I'm going to go throw him off by being orthodox, that would mean that you don't believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, you wouldn't have been great. You wouldn't have been a champion of the world. I only tell you that because Conor is going to bring Conor's best skills, not his second best skills, not try to throw his opponent off. He's going to bring his best skills. Whenever fighters start to talk about, I don't want my game plan out there, that is silliness. The great fighters fight on TV. And so people can go back and watch it because it's recorded in something called an archive. They bring their best skills. They don't go to plan C first and then try to get to B and then try to get to their best tools of A. You start with A and you work backwards to C. I'm only bringing this to you because there is zero chance that Conor McGregor is planning to surprise Dustin Poirier. Mike Tyson, much like the great Babe Ruth, would come out and tell you, this is what I'm going to hit you with, make you think on it, make you focus on it, and then come hit you with it anyway.
I thought you were going to say recorded on something called a VHS tape.
Also true. At one time.
Beta.
Ariel.
Remember Beta?
No, I don't. I've heard about Beta, but I didn't live through it. There was something called like an 8-track for cassettes too. I don't know anything about it.
What do you mean you didn't live through it? I'm younger
I
than
didn't live
you.
through it. We didn't have a VCR at the time. I didn't have, or a beta player, or whatever. I have no experience with it. I've
You
only
don't
heard
have
of
a
it.
VCR growing up?
I had a VCR, but I didn't have a beta play. You said the word beta. I don't know anything about beta.
Okay, fine. You know what? Because you're an alpha. You see what I did there?
That's likely true.
Yeah. Chael, Conor told me he relishes the idea of a long, drawn-out fight, a war. Even though he's predicting 60 seconds, he said, hey, I would invite a war. I want to get some rounds in. Do you believe him?
No, of course not. I mean, you want to get out there as quickly as possible, but I think the other would be said for Poirier. Poirier does believe, and numbers in history would support him, that the longer the fight goes, the greater the chance goes to him. Conor comes out like a buzzsaw, Ariel. He's a lot like Amanda Nunes, to use another example, where that first round, there's going to be so much pressure. There's going to be such a storm. You usually look around and there's no trees left standing. However, if there are trees left standing, you got some chopping to do. I do believe that Conor has the energy to do it.
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of people are saying, oh, he's too chill, he's too relaxed, too many good vibes. Lest we forget, a year ago, they said the exact same thing going into the Cerrone fight. And what did he do? He came out there like, you know, something shot out of a cannon, finished Cerrone in 40 seconds. Now, I don't think the fight will be that short, but don't be fooled by the demeanor. In fact, I actually think he's trying to disarm Dustin Poirier. I think this is all part of the game. This is all part of the mental warfare with Conor McGregor. And so let's talk about Dustin Poirier. So am I right in saying that when I said he has improved infinitely, that's why you raised your eyebrows? Is that what you wanted to come back? Do you not believe? Okay, you think that's inaccurate? He has not improved infinitely since 2014?
I think that is very false. And I will agree that his win-loss ratio, I will agree that his record has greatly improved. But before you think I'm insulting Dustin, please make sure you're hearing me correctly. I'm only arguing that Dustin was very good back then. Dustin mentally had not reached his peak. He mentally was a little surprised by the size of the arena. He mentally was a little surprised by the output, the media, some of the attention that he was getting because he was facing McGregor. I think that now he has matured and caught up mentally with what he always had physically. That's all I'm suggesting for you, because before we ever get to the mental side of this, okay, the mental part of this sport doesn't exist until 12 and 18 and 20 minutes in. The mental side of it doesn't exist until your nose is broken or until your eye is swollen. That's when you've got to use this and you got to dig deep. Prior to that, this is about who's the better athlete. We have very few athletes in any sport as talented as Conor McGregor. His precision, his power, and most importantly, Ariel, it is his speed. It's hard for you and I, the viewer, to even realize how fast Conor McGregor is. You go talk to a Jose Aldo. You go talk to an Eddie Alvarez privately, and they will tell you, man, this guy was lightning quick. I just couldn't see it coming.
Yeah, well, one of his famous quotes, right? Precision beats power and timing beats speed. I felt like you were just laying it out for us right then and there.
Sure. Well, in many ways, it's true, though, and I bring that to you because in the early goings, that's what it's about. It's about who's the better athlete, who's the racehorse, who can get to the target faster. That's what that opening round is about. That's why the Conor McGregors, the Amanda Nunes, the Vitor Belfort, to go back, that's why they're so dangerous in that first round. This isn't about toughness at this point. It's not about grit or who wants it more. It's not about the fighter IQ. It's about who the better athlete is. The better athlete of these two is Conor McGregor. The question is, has Poirier learned enough to make this grimy and gritty where he can show that heart, show that resilience that Poirier just showed in the Dan Hooker fight, to offer you an example, or the night that he battled Eddie Alvarez, or the night that he battled Justin Gaethje? Those were about who was tougher. The tougher guy was Poirier. The better athlete here is Conor. To get to chapter 2, you got to get 15 and 18 minutes in.
So is that a key? Take us inside the game plan right now. If you're Dustin Poirier's head coach, what do we have to do early on to get to those 15, 18 minutes?
And I hope that you understand why I'm making this point. I'm making this point because I'm coming on the back of you saying so many people are saying he's too chill, he's too relaxed. Who cares? What difference does it make? You think that slows him down? This is about speed. You think all of a sudden his timing's up? Who cares if who cares if he's happy or he's sad? What difference does it make when it comes to touching the target in a quick fashion? None. It doesn't matter what emotion he goes into this fight with until you get to the tough moments, until it's about a fight. It's not a fight at first. It's just called a fight. It's not a fight until you don't want to answer the bell. When you go in there feeling good, and Bruce Buffer's saying there's no fight. This is not a fight. This is where the fight is. And you're not even going to see that if we don't get to 18 and 15 and 22 minutes in. I'm bringing that to you because you want to talk about game plan. Poirier's game plan, real simple. Get a hold of this guy. The problem is where people are betting on Poirier, thinking he can get him tired, thinking he can get him out there. The problem you've got is what in Dustin's history, what fight in Dustin's past are you referring to? What fight did Dustin ever come out and take somebody down at will? Okay, great. Dustin's not going to take Conor down. If Chad Mendes couldn't get him down without a lot of work, Poirier's not going to get him down. Hold that thought. There's an in-between. The in-between is what Daniel Cormier made a living on. Getting an underhook, pushing a guy into the fence, taking some vigor out of him, step on his toes, knee him in the thigh. Just get those minutes. Get that heart rate going. That's the in-between. But again, partner, what in Dustin's past has ever shown us that he has that skill?
I was just going to say, we've never even seen that Dustin Poirier, let alone the first one that you talked about. So, I mean, and we're going to get your official prediction at the end of this, but it all leads me to believe that you still feel like this is a really bad matchup for Dustin Poirier.
I absolutely do. And I think that Dustin is a stud. You know, I hate to come in with this kind of a tone and tell you what a lopsided it's going to be because it sounds like I'm putting down Dustin. I acknowledge how great he is. He was the champion of the world. He's going to contest for world championships most likely again. He's a young guy. He's a very handsome, and I can pay him a ton of compliments. That's not what we're doing right now. We're talking about who is going to win under the unified rules of mixed martial arts. Definition of insanity is doing something over and over and expecting a different result. I've already seen these boys fight. I've already seen them fight with a lot of eyeballs on them. I've already seen them under the unified rules. There is nothing to believe that we're going to get a different outcome. There's just not. And everybody that says that there is keeps talking about, well, all you have to do with Conor is take him down and hold him. Who'd you ever see did it? You saw KHABIB do it in round 4 one time. That's what you're talking about? It's just one of these silly things, Ariel. And I do think that Dustin is going to be forced into a fisticuffs. I don't believe he has that ability to close the gap. I don't believe he even envisions that he's going to get a takedown. So now you're in a fisticuffs with a guy who went 30 minutes with Floyd.
I'm just so happy we got a definition of insanity. It's been a while since we heard that one, so I appreciate it, and it's very apropos. By the way, have you tried his hot sauce?
No, you know, I'm not a real hot guy. If it's a sweet one, I'll try it, but I don't want anything too hot, man. I don't have that kind of palate.
Really good. Honestly, I'm not just saying, I wouldn't bring it up if it wasn't. Very, very good.
Well, hold that. Is it a little on the sweet side, or is it straight up hot? I don't want to be burned.
It's not straight up hot. I did get, I think, a medium, maybe even a mild, but it's not sweet at all. There's nothing sweet about it.
And what would you put it on specifically? Like, would you pour this on a burger, or is this for ribs only?
You know, I'm so happy you asked that. I'm not a big hot sauce guy, but guess what? Ever since I've gotten it over the past, I don't know, I've had it for like 3 weeks now. I'm putting it on everything. I put it on pasta.
Really?
I put it on hamburger. I put it on eggs. It is really good. I guess Louisiana hot sauce is a little different. There's something, you know, our mutual friend Action Bronson was educating me about this a couple of days ago. I guess it's a little different. I don't really understand why it's different. I guess the spices. Honestly, I'd give it a shot. It's really good.
Okay. I'm going to try it now. Thank you for that.
Maybe, I mean, might be too late to get it for the charcuterie board, but it would be a nice addition. Let me say, over some cheese. What do we have tonight, by the way?
Well, okay, so we're gonna have 2 different kinds of olives, by the way, which is because of Elizabeth has upped the bar, but Brittany's willing to compete back. We got like 4 different meats. We got cheeses. We got crack. I like simple crackers myself. I'm not against a chicken and a biscuit or a Ritz, but she'll throw the beautiful crackers on there just to compete with EB, quite frankly.
Wow. 2 kinds of olives. That's exciting. Yeah. I thought, I'm not a big black olive guy. I could go with Kalamata, but I love the green. The green for me is fantastic.
I agree with you, but Ariel, every now and then there's a different, you'll bite down and there's a pit in there, man. That's too much work. And I think it's dangerous. If you're going to stuff that up, put a blue cheese in there, put a jalapeno don't put a pit in there, though, please, or without warning me.
No, it's very inconsiderate. Last thing on Dustin Poirier. There was once a knock on him. We were talking about the mental side of things, that he couldn't get over the hump when it really mattered. Korean Zombie fight was a potential number 1 contender fight. Remember back in 2012, he lost that fight. The Conor fight was massive, lost that fight. KHABIB lost that fight. Michael Johnson lost that fight. Is that still a thing? Like, once he won the interim title, do you feel like he got over that, or is that still a part of his story?
No, absolutely he did. Ever since he became a main eventer, I would back it up. I mean, the night that my eyes stood back, oh my goodness, was when he beat Gaethje. And Alvarez was on one side or the other of that. I was like, oh my goodness, who is this guy? And then what he did to Max, you know, going out, fighting Max's game and beating Max. High cardio, high pace, high output. No, Dustin Poirier is a fantastic competitor. I do argue that when he first fought Conor, he was a little bit of a deer in the headlights. That's okay. Everybody, including George St. Pierre, has had that moment. What I would also contend for you as a counter, though, while Poirier has gotten better, even if it was here, it's still better. So is Conor McGregor. Conor was not the interim champion, let alone the lightweight champion, let alone the featherweight champion, let alone changing weight classes, going into boxing. Conor has also had those big moments. I only offer for you as far as improvement goes. And yes, Poirier has improved. Ariel, it's a wash.
Well, it's always fun when the top 2 fights, top 3 fights on a particular card are all featuring fighters from the same weight class. We're getting that tonight, of course, with McGregor, with Poirier, and also with Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler fighting in the co-main event. We've got this unofficial lightweight tournament brewing in front of our eyes. You see the rankings there. They're all on the rankings. I mean, they're all ranked guys who are very, very good, who could be fighting for a belt in the not too distant future. All right, and now let us say hello to the voice of the UFC, a man who's been joining us on these Ariel and the Bad Guy pay-per-view preview shows just minutes before he heads off to the arena to call the events. This time, of course, it's UFC 257. And Jon, I have to say, Chael and I were very jealous. You're there, Fight Island. You're experiencing it all. The hoopla, the pageantry, the buzz. Can you give us a taste? Can you let us live vicariously through you? What has it felt like? You know, obviously not 18,000 fans or whatever the case may be, a small select 2,000 or so, but has it felt like a Conor McGregor fight week over there in Abu Dhabi?
Very much so, even if it's taken on a different tone than some of his previous fight weeks. And always a treat to chop it up with you boys in advance of a big pay-per-view. But having fans back in the building, even if it's a few hundred for the ceremonial weigh-in here on Friday, is a big deal and feels like it makes a big difference. And if I go back to the ABC show, I thought that crowd was sort of more fervent and into it than maybe the Chiesa Magni crowd. And I'm not sure there were necessarily more people there for Holloway Cater. But as I've said to you guys prior, there is something indescribably intoxicating about this W Hotel, Yas Island, and Abu Dhabi. I can't officially put it into words for you guys without cussing, but it's just an incredible place to be. It's the nicest hotel I've ever been at. The treatment is world-class and feels very royal. And Conor is accessible and in a fighting spirited way that he hasn't necessarily been in for many years. And I have always said that this man cares enough about his mixed martial arts legacy, especially at 155 pounds, that he is going to come back and try to bolster his legacy. Because I don't think he would enjoy feet up in retirement if he was 1-1 at 155 pounds in his UFC career. And that's where he stands right now, remarkably.
Well, Jon, let's stay on the topic of the crowd. Reportedly, there's going to be 6,000 people there. My sense is those are 6,000 KHABIB fans. And even though KHABIB's not there, aren't they going to be booing Conor? I mean, isn't this going to be an energy negatively like Conor's never felt before?
Quite possibly. It is certainly going to be an environment that is foreign to him. And I think Dustin Poirier has talked a little bit about the experience of not only fighting in Abu Dhabi and coming here for UFC 242 in 2019, but fighting in the Apex with no crowd and going through that experience. He believes it could be advantageous. I think it was pretty mixed for Conor. You know, I think he has a way to even turn some KHABIB fans, if I'm being honest. I do think you're seeing a side of Conor McGregor that Ariel and you and I have known exists for a long time, but he hasn't necessarily let that side get out. So I don't think he's too worried about it. I continue to marvel at his ability to just focus, and he has that Floyd Mayweather quality that he's just never flat on fight night. And there are just a few guys who can go in there with that resting heart rate just beaten perfectly, and he's one of them.
I would be shocked if he's booed. I feel like the Abu Dhabi fans, and you know, we know that there are some who traveled to Abu Dhabi as well. They like the brashness. They like, this isn't your typical, you know, Middle Eastern crowd that likes, you know, a humble guy who is all about humility and just kind of understated attire. I think they like what Conor represents. So I'd be shocked if he's booed. We're going to find out later on tonight. But I want to ask you about something that happened at the ceremonial weigh-ins. You know, as you know, Conor's a student of this game, right? I remember one of the first times I talked to him, he was telling me the height and reach of all the featherweight contenders. Like, he knew it off the top of his head. And after he ceremonially weighed in, he put his arm around you and he said, "I look forward to speaking to you for the first time, Jon." Now, to me, that's a guy who knows Joe Rogan isn't in Abu Dhabi, who knows that you'll be doing the post-fight interview. But it got me thinking, I feel like in the fight night days, right, the early days, you did do a few of those post-fight interviews with him, right? And if you did, you have one that sticks out? Because that energy there after he wins is something special. You know better than most. Is there one that sticks out?
Ariel, he's such a student of the game that he knows that we have never had that moment inside the octagon. I was scheduled to call his UFC debut April 6, 2013. My wife was pregnant with my second daughter, Tatum. I was living in Vegas at the time, and my wife didn't want me to go to Stockholm, Sweden. You know, had I known Conor McGregor was going to become the biggest superstar in mixed martial arts history, I said, honey, you're the one pushing out the baby. I got to go to Sweden. But alas, I have never had that opportunity with him. And, you know, I've had more time with him. You know, I got to see him in the hallway because we're on the same floor. So I've had more access to him this week. I had not talked to the man in person since the post-fight show after he knocked out Jose Aldo before seeing him in Abu Dhabi. Just circumstantially, we had fighter meetings scheduled that either he hasn't attended or have gone away. But no, I've never had the chance to interview him in the octagon. When I worked his Holloway fight in 2013, it was in Boston, but Joe Rogan was there. So we'll see if I get that opportunity. But you're right. It's a much bigger point, not about me, that he's so acutely aware of everything that's going on that he knows that, you know, it's either been Joe Rogan or Ken Flo who's had a mic in his face in the octagon. So pretty remarkable and humbling for sure.
Jon, let me talk to you about the co-main event. I can't help but feel right at my stomach, man. I mean, it's just a feeling, but my mind's a little bit attached to, like, we're in a semifinal round here, in that the winner of the main event is going to be competing with the winner of the co-main event for a championship at a future date, man. Do you have that same sense?
No doubt about it. And I think Conor, if he does win the fight, I think not that he's necessarily going to have an opportunity to call his shot if he wanted the challenge of Charles Oliveira, who is not factoring into this little four-man tournament. But Dan Hooker has really maximized this fight week for my money. I mean, that guy existed a long time ago, but I do think he's coming out of his shell a little bit. Daniel Cormier, I think, mentioned this on your show, Ariel, if I'm not mistaken, but the fighter meeting we had with Dan this time around compared to when we've been in his home country or Australia, totally different tone. I mean, he wanted to be there. So I think he's just more comfortable in his own skin. I think it speaks to the fact that he's just a more confident fighter. Does look like his corner will look a little bit different, by the way. It doesn't appear as though Eugene Behrman has made the trip. So I think that bears watching a little bit, but huge opportunity for those guys. And for Michael Chandler, I mean, this is, even if you would sit here and suggest that stylistically, this maybe is the worst matchup for him, lengthwise, skill-wise, switching stances, great takedown defense. But for Chandler, I mean, you got to be sitting here like, this is unbelievable, right? They fly me over to be the backup last October, and now I'm here. And if I beat Dan Hooker, I got a great chance to fight Conor. It just couldn't have played out more perfectly for Michael Chandler in terms of making this free agent move and getting on this fight card. And obviously, you guys know the man well, so it's easy to be happy for Mike Chandler.
What kind of vibes are you getting from Michael Chandler? Because as we know, sometimes big free agent debut doesn't really go as planned. In fact, our stats and info team tells us former Bellator champions 5-3 going into the UFC, or at least in their UFC debut, right? And amazingly, the man who he will always be linked with, Eddie Alvarez, lost his UFC debut at UFC 178 the same night that Conor McGregor beat Dustin Poirier. Do you sense that he's a little, tense? Is he nervous? Is he calm? What kind of vibes are you getting from him?
It's a great question. I don't sense any of that. I think he was particularly tight-lipped with me about the matchup. And again, he was still in quarantine because of that flight delay out of Las Vegas. So we had a phone meeting with him. I didn't get to see his face. I think he's a little bit tight-lipped with me about the matchup. I feel like he maybe had a different vision for the UFC debut than Dan Hooker, if I'm being honest. But nerves are not a factor. I think if anything, he's going to have to sort of control the emotions and try to harness the energy because he is literally jumping out of his skin. But for him, a 15-minute fight, in a lot of respects, I would think would feel like a cakewalk. I mean, this guy's been scheduled for 25 hard, essentially his whole professional career. So I think for him, he can really let it go. But Hooker can keep up with that pace for 15 minutes. So it's a very exciting matchup. I'm a little bit surprised, if I'm being honest, that the Vegas line is as close as it is. I think Dan Hooker maybe deserves a little bit more respect from pro bettors and odds makers, just given the UFC body of work. But just excited to see what Chandler can do with the opportunity. I wish it was 5 rounds.
And John,
Amen.
funny you say that. The line actually moved this morning. Believe it or not, as we talk right now, Hooker is now the favorite. But if I was to go back a week ago, Hooker was a 2-1 underdog. And I agree with you. Historically speaking, guys that come into the organization underperform their first time. Many of them win, but they don't have the performance. Chandler's going to need everything to go his way, in all fairness, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dustin Poirier needs a near perfect performance, and I think Chandler does as well. And one factor that maybe has been overlooked a little bit, the size of the octagon. That 25-footer at the apex, Hooker was in our fighter meeting. He was like, that tiny little thing. It's tiny. It feels like regional MMA. And Joe Silva always wanted to use the 25-footer, as you guys probably know, for every show. And Dana was reluctant to make that move. I like the pageantry of the 30-footer. I like for footwork guys, you can use your skills and your athleticism. Dan Hooker, this is a better octagon him. Aljamain Sterling, give me that tiny thing in the apex all day. So for me, those extra feet on the outside, I think could be potentially useful for Dan Hooker.
Great insight as always, John. So great that we're actually asking you to stick around for 2 segments this time. So sit tight right there.
Yes.
We will be with you in just a matter of moments.
When the glory and the pain is gone, it's the failures that make you strong. Can you see the path you're walking on?
And it's over.
Dan Hooker was the guy that said yes. I think he's a great dance partner to be able to get inside that octagon, make my first statement inside the UFC.
All right, Chael, let's talk a little more about this co-main, because in my opinion, it's just as interesting as the main event and perhaps even harder to predict. If there's someone out there that doesn't know Michael Chandler, but has heard us talk about him as the former Bellator lightweight champion and whatnot, important to note, he won that title for the first time around 10 years ago, almost at this point. Is Michael Chandler in his prime? Is he one of the best lightweights in the world, in your opinion?
Michael Chandler is in his prime. Is he one of the best lightweights? In my opinion, yeah, man, I think he's going to be very competitive, but he's going to need this one. Dan Hooker is ranked number 6 in the world. That's a very appropriate ranking. That's very high. That's a compliment in one of the hardest divisions, but that's where he sits. And yes, Chandler is going to need to prove that he can break in at least past the number 6 guy. Look, I think he's got his work cut out. I think that there's a reason that division is such musical chairs where they're rotating number 1 contenderships, because it's iron on top of iron. It's also what made KHABIB and his 29-0 so special, is that he did it at such a difficult class.
I got to say, I love this matchup. I didn't love the idea of Chandler waltzing in there, fighting for the belt. I think you have to earn that if you're coming over. If you're not a champion from another organization, if you're not holding a title as you walk in, like Ric Flair a la 1992, like you got to earn it, right? You got to earn this. And Dan Hooker is that guy, right? I mean, like, no, I'm being serious. Ric Flair claimed that he had the real world title, and here's Michael Chandler claiming the same, but he doesn't have it around his waist. Hooker is that guy, tough out. Is this a tougher matchup for Hooker going up against the wrestler? We all know who Michael Chandler is. Or is it a tougher matchup for Chandler going up against the striker Hooker, but who has turned into a well-rounded fighter?
This is very difficult outing for Chandler for a number of reasons, particularly because it's his debut and so many athletes underperform. Now, I think that Chandler got a level of experience in being the backup fighter for Gaethje and KHABIB. He got to go through the bubble. He got to go through the testing. He flew out to Fight Island. He went through the weigh-in process. So in some ways, there's going to be at least a little bit of a familiarity. And I realize we're splitting hairs here. I realize what I'm saying is very small, but Ariel, I suggest for you, this is a game of inches. I suggest for you that every single advantage you can get is going to matter. I feel in many ways, stylistically, that we just saw Hooker and Chandler fight. We saw it in the form of Michael Chiesa versus Neil Magny. What a lot of the Chandler supporters are saying is that Chandler is going to take him down and keep him there, of which I would push back and say the days of taking somebody down and keeping him there went away in 2003, well, until Wednesday. We saw Michael Chiesa essentially at will take an opponent down and be able to get a lot of minutes on top. So in some ways, I'm being forced to reframe my opinion. If Chandler gets Hooker down, I believe Hooker gets back to his feet, but Chiesa showed me a little something different.
So you shut me up earlier in the show when I asked you about Southpaw versus Southpaw. So let me ask you about another one that us media types like to talk about. prior to the Poirier fight, which Hooker lost in June, his last loss was a really one-sided defeat to Edson Barbosa. I remember that one. I think a lot of us thought that fight should be stopped. They should have thrown in the towel. That was his last fight without his head coach, Eugene Behrman, City Kickboxing, who I think has turned into one of the best coaches in the sport. As Jon Anik just alluded to, Eugene not in his corner for this fight. He's back home due to the quarantine rules. He's with Israel Adesanya, the middleweight champion, who's preparing for March against Jan Blachowicz. How big of a deal is this? Like, if your head coach isn't there, is there something to be said like, oh man, the last loss there, that was really bad. Eugene's not there. Should we be worried about Dan Hooker? Or is this something that, again, us media guys like to talk about?
It matters. In fairness, we are absolutely splitting hairs. But in fairness, I mean, even if you look at Hooker's last fight, it was a split decision. One licensed judge thought he won that fight. So I think that it's a real thing. I imagine they'll have a level of technology, probably in the form of an iPad, that will exist in the locker room. He will at least have that support. As far as the knowledge or information during battle, no, couldn't make a bit of difference. As far as the walkout, the preparation, and somebody that you love and trust putting his hand on you and telling you you are ready, yeah, he's going to be without that.
Yeah, that means a lot. You know, it's funny. Mike Brown couldn't go corner Jorge Masvidal in July when he fought Kamaru Usman. He unfortunately got COVID. And he told me that they held up a phone during the fight cage side and were hoping that he could offer some coaching, some advice. Unfortunately, what you're watching at home and what you're watching, you know, in person, so to speak, there's a massive delay. There's like a minute delay. So he was totally off. He couldn't really tell what was going on. It didn't really work out. So yes, in the locker room, perhaps he can be there. But as far as the fight is concerned, Eugene Behrman can't really be much help to.
But partner, what you are talking about there is symbolism. Who is with you and who supports you? I think that I love that story. I did not know that Mike Brown was there. As far as offering advice, wouldn't matter if Coach Brown was there or not. His athlete's not going to listen to a word that he says. I mean, his athlete's too caught up in the moment. But I do love that symbolism, and that's a very nice story.
Yeah. What are the chances, in your opinion, if Conor wins, if he wins, that he fights the winner of this fight?
I think it's high. I'm a little surprised that hasn't been announced. Now, I do understand you can't announce it because we don't know what's going on with KHABIB. KHABIB has been crystal clear, but for some reason, at least we're pretending we don't know what's going on with KHABIB. I would have liked to have seen that announced. Look, I think a little four-man tournament, I think that would have been beautiful. It would have been serendipitous. It's something that Dana doesn't usually do. It could have followed upon, but we get right into the semifinals. I think broader stroke sports fan really understands a straight line bracket. We don't get to do it in this sport very often. I'd have loved it, Ariel. And yes, that is my prediction. I still think that we're down to the final four.
But it is important. You win that fight, you got to call someone out, right? Like, you have to, even though Conor is fighting next, make it both of them. You'll probably get more traction if you focus on Conor and hope that he wins, because that's obviously the bigger fight. You got to call, no dilly-dallying, right? You got to get on the mic and you got to make your impression felt.
You don't have to necessarily call an athlete out, but you do have to call a spot out. You do have to say, my next fight will be for the championship. You can then leave it dangling. But yes, you need to call for a spot at minimum.
All right, now here's a look at the main card once again. Of course, we all know about Conor McGregor going up against Dustin Poirier. A rare time these days that Conor is walking out first. He is not the red corner this time, but you got to give props to the man who is the higher ranked fighter. And in this case, it's Dustin Poirier. And we're back with Jon Anik, who'll be calling the fights this evening in just a matter of moments. He's got to get to Etihad Arena, so we'll make this relatively quick. John, I wanted to ask you about Joanne Calderwood, a fan favorite. I think a lot of longtime fans, had their hearts broken when, she rolled the dice. She took the fight against Jennifer Maia. She had the title shot. She loses to Maia. And then, of course, Maia goes on to fight Valentina Shevchenko. She lost that fight. But for Joanne Calderwood, this was her first chance to fight for a UFC belt. And all the props to her. She said, I don't want to wait. And so how could you not respect that? What kind of sense did you get from her this week about that decision and whether or not she regrets it?
I think there's some regret there. I don't think she would use that verb, but if you look at the circumstances surrounding that Jennifer Maia fight, she was sick with COVID. She came out of quarantine, did a 2-week training camp, and fought Maia because she thinks she's the more skilled athlete. So it was a wayward decision. The armbar was causing her pain in the locker room after the fact. As you know, she fainted. It was a whole big ordeal. John Wood, her fiance, was scared in the ambulance that something potentially catastrophic could have happened thereafter. So it was not a good career decision. But I think big picture for JoJo, you just got to let the skills go. I mean, I think that skill for skill, she probably has more to offer than Jessica Eye, with all due respect, but there has been sort of a staple to JoJo Calderwood's UFC run where she doesn't really let it go. You know, I thought she beat Andrea Lee, but I thought she was fortunate to get past that test. But she's just in such a good place in her life. If you follow her on Instagram, she's now essentially the stepmom to John Wood's 5-year-old son, Maverick. And she has turned him into this little gentleman. And I just think that has given her a sense of purpose that she can sort of channel in the right way. But Jessica Eye's ready to go too. So I don't think it's going to be a picnic.
And John, speaking of Jessica Eye, I'm paying her a little bit special attention myself. And I don't mean the fight, I mean her. Look, it's very common for somebody to fight for a world championship, and when they come back, have a lull. They look around, hey, I'm not a main event anymore. I don't have as many reporters asking me questions. And they falsely convince themselves this must not be as big of a deal, while their opponent is having the opposite reaction, looking across the cage and saying, this is my chance. I'm in here with a former #1 contender. I realize this is not Jessica's first fight back from fighting Shevchenko. However, I do feel she has a lot to prove in this situation.
No doubt about it. It's also her first pro fight without her gallbladder. If you have ingested anything that she's done media-wise this week, oftentimes, and it affects women more than men, but if your gallbladder is functioning at 75% or so, they take it out. Hers was functioning at 9%. You know, her words, not mine, but she was essentially fighting Cynthia Calvillo with a dead organ in her body. She's had stomach issues her whole life. They didn't know if it was Crohn's disease, colitis, colon cancer. And it might sound like I'm making excuses for her as she's walking out, but when you see her on the scale before she fought Cynthia Calvillo, she was writhing in pain. She was brought to tears. And because she had missed weight for her previous fight against Viviane Araújo, nobody wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, you know, and everybody, you know, she was just a target for the entire MMA media, I think, and for fans, maybe more than the media that week, but nobody really came to her defense. So all of that being said, if you saw her on the scale, she's in tremendous shape. And she said, if JoJo beats me, she's a better fighter than I am, because this is the best version that I will have presented. She's really worked on her boxing. She can always lean on the wrestling. And, you know, her brother's a budding amateur fighter with her out in Vegas, and those two are like this. So I think she's ready to put her best foot forward. And again, pick 'em fight according to Vegas. That's the way I see it.
I want to ask you about another women's fight. Amanda Ribas feels like she's on the cusp of becoming a big star in the UFC. She was one of the stars of the first trip to Fight Island last summer, has a tough fight against Marina Rodriguez. And for Ribas, I mean, this is an opportunity to go 5-0 in the UFC. She was Paige Van Zandt's final UFC opponent, at least for now. That was a big win. Mackenzie Dern, big win. Randa Marcos, big win. Sometimes this happens where you're almost, you know, reveling in the coronation before you're actually a true contender. Is it at all going to her head? Because let's be honest, she got a lot of buzz, a lot of attention after the Paige Van Zandt win.
I think I'm in love. I mean, let's be honest, right? I mean, she is just unbelievable. Everything about her, she is so infectious in the best of ways. I will say, though, both of these fighters, Amanda Ribas and Marina Rodriguez, one major takeaway for me was that both of their coaches knew within a week of them being in the gym that they had something special on their hands. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on Marina Rodriguez, who seemingly had a very difficult weight cut today. But Ribas is the real deal, and she is not believing her own hype. She's just so excited to be here. If you saw her at the ceremony away and hugging her dad, I mean, 2 kids in a candy store. And she's got all the skills. You know, I watched some grappling footage on UFC Fight Pass where she got submitted, you know, but I think she continues to round out her game. Judo play or something fierce. I mean, she can toss you on your ass. So I just think she has more skills. She's a 3-1 favorite. She's supposed to win this fight. For Rodriguez, it's interesting because she sort of felt like one of these women was going to have to pull out. So she was in camp targeting this date, was expectant that maybe she'd get an opportunity, and she's ready to go too. So I'm excited. It's a good way to open the pay-per-view. And again, Ribas, for the second time in as many fights, being charged with opening a massive pay-per-view. So we'll see if she can deliver.
All right, John, what's going under the radar here? Aside from the ones that we've just discussed, is there any athlete or matchup that you're looking forward to?
Well, I always find it interesting when we lose a fight on weigh-in day, how they proceed in terms of which fight gets added to pay-per-view, because Otman Azaitar was supposed to fight Matt Frivola on pay-per-view, and the fight that Sean Shelby put on pay-per-view, Mahmoud Muradov taking on Andrew Sanchez. And if you know Andrew Sanchez, Chael obviously does, you know, two-time NAIA national champion, outstanding wrestler. came into the UFC. We thought he was one of the best wrestlers on the roster, finally starting to believe in his striking, coming off a huge knockout. But this kid from Uzbekistan is the betting favorite for a reason. I mean, he's a freak on the feet, just destroyed Trevor Smith his last time out. He doesn't force the knockout. They will have the judges in their seats for that middleweight matchup. I'm not sure they're going to need their cards, though.
All right, John, we'll let you go. We've used up your pipes. You've got 7 hours of action to call. So good luck tonight with the crew. We will be watching. Appreciate your time as always.
Thanks for the energy, boys. See you soon.
All right, Chael, it's that time of the show. Time to get your picks, and we will get them in a second. But I want everyone watching right now to go make their own fight picks and challenge your friends as well for a chance to win. Get this, $5,000 with ESPN's UFC 257 pickup game. Which main card fighter will land the most strikes? What will the method of victory be in the main event? All those questions can be answered in this pick'em game. To play for free, go to ESPN.com/UFC pick'em and make your picks right now. Chael, you don't even have to do that. You can make them right here for all of us. Let's start with the co-main event. Michael Chandler, Dan Hooker. Who do you got and how?
Dan Hooker, this is going to be grimy and it's going to be gritty. He's going to need to do what we call sprawl and brawl. Keep the fight on his feet, get a little ugly there. And by the way, Chandler has some power on his feet. Okay, this is not, don't make believe that Hooker's not going to have to fight, but I do think he's going to use that range. I think when they get clinched, he's going to slip some elbows, and I think he's going to do some damage. They're going all 3 rounds, but the judges are going to favor the hangman, Dan Hooker.
That would be a huge win for the New Zealander, Dan Hooker. So let's talk about the main event now. Does Dan Hooker fight potentially Conor McGregor? Does he fight Dustin Poirier? Who's your pick and why?
Conor McGregor likely by stoppage, and I call a TKO and a KO the same thing, meaning the fight will be stopped due to strikes. Conor's going to hit him everywhere. He's going to chop those legs. He's going to kick him in the belly, and ultimately he's going to come in with the hands. One thing that nobody who's fought Conor and no analysis has ever put their finger on is when Conor goes for the knockout, he uses the hands and he goes to the head. When he attacks you with knees and when he attacks you with teeps and spinning kicks, they all go to the body. You don't have to worry about those as much, but he will distract you. He's going to lit you in the head with these. No athlete has identified that. No coach has figured that out yet, which means they're not going to stop it on Saturday.
60 seconds?
No, longer.
2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds?
I think we get a few rounds. Yeah, I think we get into the 3rd round here, Ariel. I think we get somewhere from that 8 to 12 minute point, but ultimately McGregor.
All right. I can't wait. So, I mean, Hooker McGregor, that would be a fun fight next. We'll have to see if they actually pull it off. But the table has been set, my friends. UFC 257 on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. The prelims, by the way, starting in a matter of moments on ESPN Plus. A lot of fun, as always, breaking it down with Chael P. After the fight card, by the way, will be on the ESPN MMA YouTube channel, which you are probably maybe watching right now. And we'll break it all down, and we'll be able to see if it will, in fact, be Dan Hooker versus Conor McGregor next. It's going to be a fun night. There's nothing like a McGregor fight card. We're getting one. It's been a while. I can't wait. I know Chael P can't wait. Thank you very much, Corporate Jake. Thanks to all of you for watching. Enjoy the fights. We'll talk to you right after them.
Fight fans, ESPN Plus is the exclusive home for UFC pay-per-view. Here's how to watch. Go to ESPNplus.com/PPV and click Buy Now. Or go to the E Plus tab in the ESPN app and click on the Fight tile to purchase. If you're a new subscriber, you get the next UFC pay-per-view and an ESPN Plus annual plan for only $89.98. This is an awesome deal. You get a UFC pay-per-view event and everything ESPN Plus has to offer for a whole year. It's over a 25% discount. After you buy, be sure to log into your device with your ESPN account. Then you can stream anywhere, including TVs, tablets, laptops, phones, wherever you want to watch it. Go to ESPNplus.com/PPV for more details.